Hey everyone, Tapdawg here with Little Alchemist Helper, and today I wanted to review something that was a big change in the game that happened, kind of explain what it means, what you can expect from it, how it affects the whole game, and just talk about that all. I did release a very small teaser about this earlier today in the shorts, but I will be giving the full details in this video, and then tomorrow there's an update for the Thanksgiving pack, and that's coming out tomorrow, so I will also have a pack review out tomorrow for the updated Thanksgiving pack. Quick note for those of you who always ask, where's your review for X, Y, and Z? If you don't see a review up on the day a pack comes out, chances are that means I've already reviewed the pack. And if there's no significant changes to the pack, like new backfills, a brand new Onyx card or something, I'm not going to do an update to that pack because what I've written before is still the same true. The rankings might be a little bit changed, and I have videos up on the channel for Onyx and for gold combo card rankings. Those are my current rankings for those cards. If I ever update those, I will put those videos out as well. But if you don't see a pack review, it is already on the channel. Every pack has been reviewed on this channel. Just search for the name of the pack, and you'll find that review. Okay, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's jump into the announcement that got made today. So it says here, hey Alchemists, we're making some changes to the fusion powers. We want to increase the number of strategies players can use and make the game even more fun. This is one of the first steps in that direction. So fusion powers with an orb ability that costs 3 now costs just 2. So this is all of the abilities that are like half as strong as the main abilities. So Pierce becomes a 2 instead of a 3, Block, Reflect, Siphon, Amplify, and Weaken. Those are all the lower quality versions of the normal 5 orb abilities. So like Pierce, instead of taking away all of your opponent's defense, it only takes away half of their defense. Block, instead of taking or doubling your defense, it only does half double. So if it was at 10, instead of doubling to 20, it would go up to 15. Reflect, whatever damage is dealt to you, you reflect back half of that damage. So if you take 10, you would reflect back 5. Siphon, whatever damage you deal, half of it gets reflected back to you as health. Amplify, whatever your card attack is, half of that attack is added to it. So again, if your card attack was 10, it would become 15. And then Weaken is whatever your opponent's attack is on their card, half of that attack is removed. However, if they use a critical strike, it still gets doubled, and only 25% of the total gets removed on that, just so you're aware on the Weaken. Alright, so then it says fusion powers that had an orb cost of 5 now have a reduced cost of 4. And that's for Curse. So again, that removes all of your opponent's attack unless they use a critical strike, and then it just gets rid of the original attack, but it still doubles the secondary attack. So basically, it doesn't use its critical strike in essence. Protection, which is doubling your defense, is now 4 orbs instead of 5. Absorb, again, any damage you deal to your opponent that turn gets reflected back as health to you. That is now 4. And then counterattack, any damage received this turn, you reflect it all back to your opponent as well. And that is now 4. There's no changes to critical strike. They still cost 5 orbs. And crushing blows, they cost 5 orbs. In the next few weeks, we're also going to be making an adjustment to Tiebreaker, changing it from Elementalist to Enchanter. We wanted to give you an advance notice, and we'll announce the change before it goes live. Okay, so a lot of information there to kind of unpack. The TLDR of it is really the only change that's going to affect the majority of players is if you have a hard time getting your orbs all filled up by your end of your second turn, it's going to be slightly easier for you if you're using counterattack cards, because now you only need to get 4 of the 5 orbs filled up instead of having all 5 of them filled up to use your counterattack. That's really the biggest change that's beneficial to people who might be using counterattack cards but don't have a full fused deck, or a very optimized deck that has mostly fused cards. This will also, the primary purpose of this change was to kind of help out the people who are on the lower ranks in bronze and silver who might be trying to use some of the 3 orb cards, because now they only cost 2 orbs to use. So the idea being it's going to be a faster battle for those people. However, I did have some feedback, because this was something that Monty had shared with us in the Discord a week or two ago. And so he asked everyone for feedback and wanted to get our thoughts. So I wanted to share with you guys my thoughts from this and kind of go through why I think this isn't that great of a change. So first, I said, I think the biggest problem you might face with this change is the lack of good 3 orb cards. So again, those cards that only do a 50% change rather than the doubling of the change. They typically don't have the same stats as premium 5 orb gold cards, and I gave my examples. So the best Amplify for use purposes is the Supernova, which is a 2612, and that's the one that gets its attack 50% increase, so it becomes a 3912. Even spending 2 orbs to do 39 damage just is not really going to move the needle all that much, and it's not... When it costs the same amount of dust to level that card up versus the amount of dust required to do Claws, which is another gold final form card, that would do 62 damage... I don't see why you would waste your dust on such a low-level card when dust is such a hard thing to come by in this game. So then I also used the best block is Guardian Angel, which again is a 1426, which becomes a 1439. If someone's using a sniper against you, they're still going to be doing 40 plus damage to you. You're going to die if you have low health, because really this again is for beginners, and you can easily get sniper from the beginning packs from Combat that just came out. My third account has that, and he's got 37 health, and that's kind of high for his bracket. Most of the people in my bracket have like 30 health, but they're all 3 turning already, and they're using good, strong diamond final form cards. So the amount of people that really need these, I think, is few and far between. I'll continue on. Best Reflect, 2617, and Baseball Bat, which is a 9.5. They both reflect 34 damage if you're using Sniper, which I use that as my equivalent because that's the best critical strike. That's the card that most people play when you get higher in the game. The best Siphon is Soul Stealer, 2515. I hope no one's using Siphon cards, but I just included that with my data. The best Weaken is a 2419, Professor Y. And the best Pierce is the Shadow Prelate, which is a 2816. So instead of being able to do 28 damage, you only do 14 damage to your opponent, as long as they're not using an Enchanter. Because if you used Enchanter, then you're only really doing 11 damage to them. But I think there's a niche case where these might be helpful for players in gold or below, but I'd still recommend players to invest in 5 orb cards instead, because those are going to stay in your deck longer. And I stand by what I said there. I'm never going to recommend someone invest dust into a now 2 orb card, because long term you're not going to use it. Those are the cards, when you get them from the basic coin boxes, I dust them immediately, and that's what I recommend to all of the players, because they're just not worth the investment. The payback on them is not there. You can get free gold final form cards that are much better from farming the bosses, from doing the events. You can even get them from the daily deals now, and the Cauldron. So really, I don't see a purpose for having those 2 orb cards or using them. And that's just a good example of why not. But I have a couple more reasons why. Second, I said premium gold final form cards typically have an attack and defense that's much higher than 3 orb cards. Here's the average of the level 1 attack and defense for them. And basically what you'll see is there's a 1 to 2 stat difference for the 2 orb cards versus the 4 to 5 orb cards. And it might not sound like a lot, but that's often the difference between a win and a loss, is 1 to 2 health. And these premium cards, again, then also double instead of 1.5ing. So that 1 to 2 difference actually equates to a 3 to 4 difference potentially in those stats. But then, I gave you that example of Claws, which is a 62 when it doubles versus the best Supernova, 39. So you're looking at 14 more points of damage there, and that is significant for this type of a game. Point 3, I said another problem you face is the quantity of selection of 3-orb cards versus 5-orb cards in the game. This is a little bit of old data because there has been, I think, Darkness Pack came out and Shrine Pack came out, so I didn't have that information in the data I was using here. But I said that there's probably 5 to 20 more cards not included, and those would all be on the premium side, not on the 2 to 3 orb side. So Amplify, we've got 28 of those in the game that are gold Final Form cards, versus 270 Critical Strike gold Final Form cards. So there's just 10 times more of those. Block's a little bit smaller of a size, but still 25 versus 171. Reflect, 27 versus 82. Siphon, 30 versus 175. Weaken, 29 versus almost 200. And then Pierce, which is the Crushing Blow variety, 30 versus 184. So again, there's not a lot of variety. Not that that's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but just when you have a lot more quantity of a card choice, you're going to have a lot more flexibility where you'll have the ones that have a really high attack and a low defense, but also the ones that have a really high defense and a low attack, you know? So you'll see more variety when you have so many cards. But with those other ones that there's only 30 of them, there's not a lot of variety in it, and it gets really boring really fast, I guess you could say. I added on in my comment there, I honestly think the simplest change that would make the largest impact is switching Tiebreaker from Elementalist to Enchanter, which is what they ended up saying they're going to also do. And I said it gets rid of the extra damage per turn that Elementalist causes at the start of each turn, which makes the other arena abilities more viable. And really, at the end of the day, what they're wanting to see is people not just using Tiebreaker as the meta for this game, you know. You might notice that all the top players have Master Healer for their away deck because that gives you 10 extra health and just makes you a little bit more tankier and harder to beat. But when we actually play offensively, I think almost all of us are using Tiebreaker. There might be a handful of people that use other strategies. There's T1337, he uses a Lobotomizer stall deck. I think it was Dustmaster who said that he uses Master Healer and just does tanking, which I've tried in the past, and it's very inconsistent. You don't win as often as you do with a Tiebreaker deck. And so Tiebreakers is what most of the top players use, because every time you would have lost because of health, but your opponent's health went down too, instead of losing or tying, you're winning there. So it's a no-brainer of why you want to have that flexibility. Let me see what my next slide is here. I can't remember. Okay, so this was me. My other suggestion I came up with for them was that instead, get rid of the cheaper variety. Get rid of those, the Weaken, the Amplify, all those. Make them be the full power. But instead of having a lower orb cost for those cheaper ones and a higher orb cost for the stronger ones, do it by rarity. So maybe your bronze versions of all those cards are 1 orb. Your silvers are 2 orb. Your golds are 3 orb. And then the diamonds, since they're still the most powerful, make those be 5 orb. So separate it by rarity. Let them all have the same power type, because a bronze card's already going to be weaker as is, just because it doesn't get as high of a plus on each of its levels for the amount of attack and defense it gets per level. So let it be only 1 orb to use those. For silvers, make them 2. Golds, have all of them be at 3. And then your diamonds keep at 5, because they are the strongest ones. And so you have to sacrifice and have full orbage to use those. And I included a picture here of, here's your top 10 or so. Let me see if I can make this a little bit smaller, because I think it's missing a couple of the images on it. Is this the picture? Yeah, that's the picture. Okay. So this is the top 10 or so gold Final Form Critical Strikes. Okay, so Claws is the best Critical Strike gold Final Form card. When you double its attack, 31 goes to 62. 62-13, I would consider using that if it cost me 3 orbs. Right now, it costs me 5 orbs to use that. Why would I use that when I can use Sniper and use 72 instead of 62? Right? So that's... And also I'd have 19 or 20 defense instead of 13 defense. So I'd have more defense and I'd have more attack for the same orb cost. Now, granted, it does cost less dust to level up this Claws versus leveling up Sniper, but at the end of the day, if my deck's going to be that much more consistently winning using Sniper versus Claws, I'm going to choose that. But if Claws here, if that only costs 3 orbs to make and use rather than the 5 orbs it costs now, that would be something that would actually be useful. Something I could see myself pondering and deciding deck strategy of should I go with this instead, or potentially even I talked about in the chat that if you use, there's one of the arena abilities is you get 6 orbs instead of 5 orbs, so you can get 1 extra orb filled in. So you could your first 2 turns fill up your combo meter so you have all 6. Turn 3 comes around, that's when your opponent's going to use something. So then you could use your gold curse card or your gold protect card and mitigate or get rid of the most of the damage that they would have done to you. And then on turn 4, when your opponent now is out of their orbs, you can use your critical strike, you can use your crushing blow, you can use whatever of those cards you wanted to use, because you get to do 2 attacks in a row since you are able to have the 6 orbs and you only use 3 on that first turn. So just that's where I see the ability to actually have some potential deck variety, deck changes. But typically, I don't think you're going to be able to move the needle with just dropping down the cheaper abilities by 1 orb. I just there's not enough of them. They're not good, and it's just not worth it. So wanted to talk about as well. The last thing here is the Tiebreaker announcement. So a lot of people got freaked out. What's going on? Tiebreaker is going to suck now. Do I even still want to use Tiebreaker? All sorts of panic happened this morning. And don't worry, Tiebreaker, even with this change from being Elementalist to Enchanter, is still going to be your best option for almost everyone. So all this is going to do is when you play Tiebreaker, your very first turn, you normally, if you got 2 orbs filled, you'd be doing 2 fire damage to your opponent. If you had 3 orbs filled, you'd be doing 3 fire damage to your opponent. Then the next turn, when you filled up your orbs, you'd be doing 5 damage to your opponent just through that fire ability. So those 5 points of damage plus the 2 to 3 from the first turn, so all in total 7 to 8 damage that you would have done previously is no longer being done to your opponent because of the change here. Instead, you will be getting additional attack and defense on your card. Now, that doesn't necessarily equate to any extra damage dealt to your opponent, though, because if you have low-quality cards, chances are you're not going to be able to beat an opponent that has 55 health and is using all Onyx cards. You might get 1 or 2 points of damage off, but typically you won't. So in the current game, how this works, I'm going to pull this up here. With red Tiebreaker, if you go against a opponent that has Master Healer 3 health, so they're the blue guy, they start the game with 65 health. So if your opponent has 55 health, they start the game with Master Healer 3. That gives them 10 points of health. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. I'm going to have to go this way. Okay. So then they start the game with 65 points. On turn 1, you will do either 2 or 3 orbs, right? If you and your opponent will either fill 2 or 3 orbs onto theirs. So technically, this is actually probably a range of 64 to 66 is what turn 1 your opponent's health would be. On the low end, 64 means that you got 3 orbs and they got 2 orbs, so you did 1 point of damage from them. I'm not even counting any damage dealt on that turn. This is just the starting health. I'm assuming that you don't do any damage to your opponent, okay? Turn 2, you both now have 5 orbs. So no damage is dealt because you deal 5 damage, they heal 5 damage. So at the end of turn 2, technically this should be actually 64 to 66 is your opponent's health. Now, if you use Sniper and they use Sniper, you both do 52 damage to each other. they're going to end up with 12 to 13, maybe 14 health remaining, and you lose. Right? I'm sure some of you have had that happen before, where you go against someone that's got 55 health, you use your sniper, they use their sniper, and you just didn't do enough damage to them because they were on Master Healer, so you lost. So the strategy has been, since then, have a Wolf Warrior, have a Lady Revenant in your deck. Because with Wolf Warrior versus a sniper, your Wolf Warrior receives, I think, 56 damage and also deals 18 damage. So in total, it reflects a 74 damage to your opponent, meaning that they'd have negative 10 health or so, and you would win that round. So now, getting rid of a red tiebreaker and switching it to a green tiebreaker, let's show you what that would look like, all right? So green tiebreaker, against a Master Healer 3, your opponent starts with 65 health. On turn 1, they will heal themselves for 2 to 3 health. So they are now at 67 to 68 health. Then turn 2, they heal themselves for 5 points of damage, or 5 points of health. So now they're up to 72 to 73 health. If you use Sniper against them, 52 versus 52, they end up with 20 to 21 health remaining, and you lose. So the amount of health that they'd have at the end is still positive, just like it was for red, and you would still lose in that situation. However, Wolf Warrior versus Sniper, again, you would take 56 damage that gets reflected back to your opponent, plus the 18 that he does to the sniper, and you end up with 0 to -1 health for your opponent, and you would win in that situation. So really, long story short, it's not going to be that big of a difference if you're already using a counterattack card to do this. Now, granted, I should note, Lady Revenant is able to kill on the red TB. She is not able to kill on the green TB for this specific matchup. She ends up having, I think you end up having like 5 or 6 health remaining for your opponent with this situation. So there is a slight change there. And that's not a bad thing, because basically counterattack is almost a cheese method for people to be able to fight against the top players, right? Someone who's been playing the game long enough to have 55 health pretty much has a deck that's all or mostly all Onyx cards. They might have some still gold cards in there, but it's pretty much fully fused deck, maybe 1 or 2 cards that aren't fused yet, and they've been playing the game for a number of years. It seems kind of silly. It's a good and bad thing that a player who's been playing since August is able to be at or near the top with 30, 35 health because of Tiebreaker. So this is a slight nerf, yes, to Tiebreaker. It is, but I think it's the best solution to be able to even out the ranks so that players who have better decks, have been playing longer, have higher health, are actually going to have a better chance of ranking higher because of that investment they've had in the game. So you might see a slight shift in people with lower amounts of health being able to rally and stay up as high as they have been. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You're still going to be winning the majority of your games. What you'll probably see is there'll be newer walls that get formed. So people who are 55 health, have almost full Onyx decks, will be at the top. Then you'll have this subcategory that's a much larger of people who could be anywhere from 30 health to about 50 health that are still trying to improve their decks, get it all the way up, and that area is where you'll see a lot of that fluctuation happening, people moving back and forth. But you'll go back to having that 55 health at the top. And then down below, you'll have all the people who don't listen to this, don't watch these, and have a deck that's 30 Final Form cards and wondering why they're still in bronze. It just happens that way. So, anywho, I know this is a lot of information. It's probably way too much information. But I just wanted to share that with you guys, give you my full feedback. Again, I think the best strategy would be to have all bronze Final Form cards cost 1 orb. All silver cost 2, all gold cost 3, and then all diamond cost 5. You could make a case for diamond costing 4, but I think that would make them even more overpowered. I think keeping them at 5 is the way to go. But with how it is now, the real only change that affects people is your counterattack cards are going to be easier to use because you only need 4 orbs for them. And so a card like Wolf Warrior or a card like Lady Revenant is going to be easier to use and trigger, and it'll help people. With the change to Tiebreaker, you'll see just a little bit more of a gap between the high health opponents and the lower health opponents. All right, that's all I had for you guys today. Be sure to check out my pack review for Thanksgiving. It should be coming out tomorrow when the pack goes live. All right, take care, guys.